October 9th, 2020. It's Friday? It's Harp Friday! So it may not be Tuesday, but there's a good reason for this episode taking place on October 9th. And that's because 30 years ago, in October 9th of 1990, is the first sort of recorded date that I have of when I started playing the harp. So I started sometime in September in 1990 with Kathryn Ely, a fantastic teacher. She studied with Charles Kleinstuber and spent a summer in New York studying with Marcel Grangeny. And I went on to study with her for over a decade. And very early on, of course, working through the first harp book and also pieces from Old Tunes for New Harpists, she would write down the date that we started the piece. But on those very first few pieces, there is no date. So the first dated piece I have here in the first harp book is the Russian tune on October 23rd. But in Old Tunes for New Harpists, Dilling's classic book, I have October 9th for Yellowbird. And also, I think, Little Waltz, but I'm going to talk about Yellowbird today. That's what I just played. And so I definitely started sometime in September, but I don't know when. But as I say, this is the first sort of recorded date, October 9th, 1990. So 30 years ago. And I might do a video talking a little bit more about that. 30 years, that's a big number. But what I thought I would do today was talk about how to play Yellowbird. And I have these memories of playing this, coming home after my lesson, I guess. And for some reason, I'd always associated that with a spring day. But of course, that doesn't make sense. It was October. But it must have been one of these beautiful early October days where it's crisp, but the sun is shining, and just coming back from my lesson and going and playing outside and just thinking, is this real life that I'm so lucky to be able to play this music. Wow. And I think I knew the song Yellowbird. Maybe my mom had sung it to me or something. And so I knew the song, and it was looked really fun to play just from the lesson. And I was just, wow, here I am playing music. Because when I went in, I didn't know how to read music, and I had no particular expectations. So fantastic memories of this piece, and I thought it would be fun to do a Harp Tuesday episode looking at it. So it's in some ways it's a very basic piece, but to play it well is actually somewhat challenging. So let's kind of go through it and talk about it. So of course it involves all these chords, all these thirds, so-called, because if we count starting from the first string that we're playing, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 3, we're playing notes that are a third apart. So that's oftentimes what that chord shape is called. And of course, it looks so nice, right? They're stacked one on top of each other so symmetrically. And this, of course, presents a bit of a challenge to a new harpist, because previously maybe you're playing some notes with 2, you're playing some notes with a thumb, but now you have to coordinate those and play them together at the same time. And of course, one of the things that can happen is we're accustomed to, when we're kind of moving the thumb and the finger, to do this, to grab things, to kind of pinch in a way. And so that can start to happen. But what you want is to still have that same wrapping the thumb on top of the finger, right? Closing at an angle. So not like this, but closing on top of the finger. And the fingers closing nicely into the palm. And trying to have that happen at the same time. Oh, and of course, I'm doing this episode on this harp because this is the harp that I started on. So it doesn't have the same beautiful tone that my Excalibur does, but I felt it was definitely appropriate to play on this, which is the harp that sort of started my journey. So anyway, we're going to try and then close the finger, wrap the thumb over, and play those notes at the same time. And of course, again, initially, for a beginning harpist, you might, usually it's the second finger that comes first, but you could, of course, maybe the thumb would come first, but trying to make both of those notes happen at the same time. So that can be just a challenge all in and of itself. Now, one other thing to think about with these thirds, with these chords, is that idea of wrist motion. And this might not have been something on this particular lesson. This might have not been introduced to me yet. But this idea that you can have some wrist motion whenever we come away from the strings, right? That we can not only close the fingers and the thumb, but also that we can hinge, the knuckles can lead us away, hinging at the wrist. So it's, you want it to be aligned so that we're not at a weird angle, right? Just stacked neutrally above the wrist, above the elbow. And that this is something, of course, you can practice away from the harp, right? Like resting your arm on your knee. I'm going to demonstrate here so you can see. But resting your arm on your knee, supporting this, and just practicing this motion, right? And being able to, again, one of the things that can happen is if you're moving the knuckles away, up and away, that then the fingers can maybe start to curl. So this idea that we're still closing down into the palm, we're just moving up and away with the knuckles, right? So this kind of motion as a way to kind of relax and also to float up, get away from the strings, and then drop back down again. So great on sort of repeated, or in this case, we're not repeating them, but we are bouncing off each time. So something else to think about. And then the other thing to think about is just reading the music. Because again, when I started playing the harp, I didn't know how to read music. So this would have certainly been, again, at most maybe 4 weeks in. And this one is so nice because of the pattern. So when we get a chord like this, I tend to read from the bottom to the top. Of course, the top note is the tune, the thumb note is the tune. But I might be, maybe I'm focused on the bottom note, maybe I'm focused on the top note. For now, I want to talk about looking at the bottom note. So we look at this bottom note, and all we have to do is find that first one and say, oh, that's a B. We find that B, we know that this thumb is a third higher, which means we skip a string, right? This shape here. And then it's so beautiful because as we go along, the next bottom note is one string higher. So we don't specifically have to identify that that's C and E. We can just go up one and then back down one, right? The next one, back down one, and then back down another one, and then a skip, right? So we're going, here's our starting one, up one, down one. So back to where we started, but starting one, up one, down one, skip. And now we find this 2 and 1 right here. So it's as if we went up one, so as if we find a third, but instead of playing them at the same time, we play 2, 1, off, and then repeat those notes. And then we move up one string. So, you know, all these beautiful little patterns, right? And so easy, and yet so satisfying. And again, we move up one string. And here, in the words, you can see that there's a comma, but it could be worth putting a comma there as well. If I were writing this, typesetting this, I would break the beam there, because this is the end of a verse, end of a phrase. So even though this next, all the 3, 4 of these notes in this bar are equal, right? Pulse, 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 pulse. We might take a little bit extra time, or at least be aware that bone, yellow, bird, a little bit of a breath, not as much as that, but just that we're separating a little bit. And then here we are back again. The starting one, up one, down, down, skip. Find this one, up one, but 2, 1, repeat. And now all we have to do is this, 1 and 3. So this is a little bit new, trying to make sure that 2 is staying down, right? Palms still pointing down, fingers are still pointing down, that we're not up like this to keep 2 out of the way. Just let it relax right here. And we end with a G. We're in the key of G, we're ending with a G. Very typical, right? Great. So, yeah, and very easy kind of just to memorize, or again, to maybe read the bottom note or the top note and see this little pattern. Skip. 2, 1 chord, 2, 1. And there you have it. The left hand, meanwhile, is super easy. And it's funny because I was looking at this. I had a version scanned in on my iPad that wasn't this particular copy. And I was thinking, oh, I'm not sure about that 3 that's marked there, because Mildred has 3, 2, 3, 2. And sure enough, my teacher had written in 2. And I think it just makes sense to bounce, bounce, bounce. It's not fast. We're not needing to maybe connect. So, and again, the default, right, is, of a single note is with 2. So we go, oh, and so we just play a D, G, D, G, right? That's all we do. Just those 2 notes, back and forth, back and forth. Skip. Skip. Here's this 6th, and with 2 Gs. So there it is. Now, of course, just being able to play those notes was, as I say, super exciting and satisfying at the time. There is, of course, a chance to maybe think a little bit more about the dynamics. So so we kind of maybe push ahead a little bit through here, right? So maybe it gets a little bit louder. Maybe it gets a little bit faster, dom, 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 and then it maybe tails off a little bit at the end of that. And then, so we go dom, 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 dom. It's possible that we could hint at a little bit of an echo effect on this bar that we hear. Sorry. Sorry. Maybe. So let's try it again. And then here, this, if we wanted to, normally, of course, we're thinking about letting the strings ring for as long as possible, but here we could, to have it be a little bit dry, a little bit almost staccato by replacing that first chord. Whatever it is. Or not, right? Or maybe it's a little bit too much. Maybe it's fine just to go. But again, even just a simple little piece like this with not a lot of notes, a chance to play around with what we're trying to say with it, right? How we're trying to shape it. And again, it says quickly, right? A fun piece to try and play fast. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, 30 years of playing the harp, which is pretty cool. And as I say, I might do a video on that a little bit later. But yes, hope you enjoyed this Harp Friday. Go and play some Yellowbird yourself. And I will see you in, I guess, a week and a half or thereabouts. Cheers.